The Hobo Spectre. Floyd Griffith was a drifter and a hobo, a comparably young man as far as Knights of the Road are concerned. He had been on the bum for 2 years, ever since he had been discharged from the Navy at age 27. The reason he had chosen that way of life? He had made a promise to himself that if he was lucky enough to live through World War II, he would spend the rest of his life living from day to day. It was during the Battle of the Coral Sea, May 8th, 1942, when he made this vow to himself. He never believed he would survive this momentous sea battle, the most savagely fought skirmish of its kind in history, a naval engagement that marked the turning point in the war for the Allies, with the sinking of 15 warships and the damaging and probable sinking of 20 other vessels. Floyd had been aboard a nearby destroyer when the badly damaged carrier, the Lexington, blew up. It was the final explosion of the torpedo warheads and her magazines detonating that sent the great ship to the bottom with a bone-grinding roar. That explosion hurled Floyd against a bulkhead from its force and knocked him out. He had never been the same since, hence his vow. Now, he found himself huddled in a corner of an empty freight car speeding through Illinois in the month of January 1947. Although he distinctly remembered having been alone when the train began to pull out of the yards of the nation's great rail center, he did not seem at all surprised when he awakened to see another man riding in the empty box car with him. The man was in his late 40s, unkempt and emaciated. His cadaverous appearance was spectre-like, and his deep-set black eyes were fixed in an almost hypnotic stare upon Floyd. "When'd you get on?" Floyd asked, raising his voice in order to be heard above the sound of the wheels clacking over the tracks. The man did not reply. He continued to sit there in the opposite corner watching him. "What's the matter, Bo?" Floyd asked. "Can't you talk?" No reply. Floyd grew uneasy. He sat for a while thinking, wondering what to do. The uneasiness became uncomfortable, and before long he became annoyed, then angry. He got up and glared at the man. "What the hell are you staring at? Do I owe you something, Bo?" No reply. The beady eyes continued to gaze fixedly at him. Turning his back, Floyd went to the sliding freight car door and viciously kicked it open, venting his fury upon it. A cold blast of air struck him and rushed into the box car. It was a bleak afternoon, smoky gray from a threatening overcast that blotted out the sun. As the train sped along the 60 miles an hour over the brown countryside, Floyd leaned warily against the doorway and stared at the horizon. He guessed that he was somewhere within 100 miles south of Chicago, and he found himself hoping that the train might go as far as Georgia or perhaps even Florida, where a warmer climate would be most welcome. Without quite knowing why, he turned around suddenly. A strange feeling of dread had come over him. The hobo who had been in the freight car had vanished. Floyd pulled himself back from the open doorway and flattened against the wall, unable to believe that anyone could have gone out without seeing him go. The door on the other side of the car was sealed from the outside, and there were no other exits through which the mysterious hobo could have gone. Uneasily, he settled down into the corner at the front of the car, forward of the open door, and tried to figure out if he had actually seen someone in the box car with him or not. The more he thought about it, the more he began to doubt his sanity. Had it been a hallucination, he asked himself, or had it been some unexplainable trick his eyes had played on him? Since there were some clumps of excelsior and cardboard packing strewn around the car, it could have been a mirage of some sort formed out of the debris. Shrugging his thoughts away, Floyd shivered and turned up his collar. Trying to get warm inside the shabby overcoat, he drew up his knees, rested his chin on his hands, and peered into the gloom. During the night, while he was asleep, Floyd had a peculiar dream. He had found himself in the dream standing at the door of the freight car, looking at the sunrise. Then, As though he was seeing himself in a vision, he saw the cadaverous hobo come up behind him and shove him off the train. He landed unhurt and began to walk across a seemingly endless field. Then he found himself at a crossroads. Again the spectre of the hobo appeared and pushed him to the right. He walked along the dirt road until he came to a small house. Then he was at the door, opening it and going inside. There he saw a wizened old man reclining on a crude bed. The old man was beckoning to him and trying to say something, but no words came from his toothless mouth. With a jolt, Floyd awakened. He stood up, balancing himself against the splintery sides of the boxcar to keep from falling as the train rocked and pinched, and stumbled across to the closed sliding door. He frowned when he remembered that he had left it open the night before, but thinking that had somehow slid shut of its own accord from the train's momentum, he pushed it open. The first rays of the morning sun were bathing the countryside in a wash of golden light. The warmth of the sunlight felt good, and he basked in it for a while, taking his breakfast in the form of big draughts of the fresh, dew-laden air. He was starved, and he wished for a hot cup of strong coffee and a roll. All of a sudden, he felt something give him a hard shove. He went hurtling out of the door. Although the train was traveling at a high rate of speed, he landed on his feet, bewildered and unhurt. Then, as he watched the train vanish in the distance, he recalled the dream. His hair prickled, and suddenly his hunger was forgotten. Everything seemed unreal as he began to trudge across a field, the same seemingly endless field he had seen in his dream. He lost all track of time. He walked tirelessly, almost without effort, and despite the now gnawing hunger at the base of his stomach, he felt good. As he walked, the feeling of well-being gradually increased. Finally, he reached a small rise in the ground, and there, stretched before him, were the crossroads he had also envisioned in his dream. He began to hurry toward it. Without hesitation, turned to the right. After he had walked along a dirt road for several miles, he saw the house he had remembered. He went directly up to the door as if it was expected of him. He opened it and went inside. There, on a crude bed, was the wizened old man. His arms were outstretched, beckoning with a gnarled, emaciated hand. Floyd knelt beside him. "What is it, old-timer? What are you trying to tell me?" But before he could speak, the old man fell back upon the ticking of the grimy bed and lapsed into unconsciousness. Floyd hastily got up and began to look around the small house, trying to find something to give him. It was obvious that the old man was bedridden and in all probability had not eaten anything for some time. After a few minutes, he found a tin of tea. He made a fire in the wood stove, went outside to the pump he noticed on his way in, and filled a pan with water. He then put it up to a boil and returned to the old man's bedside to see what he could do in order to make him more comfortable. Later that evening, the old man managed to sit up after Floyd had patiently administered to his needs and fed him the tea with some honey he had found in a jar. Although the old man could hardly make himself heard, Floyd encouraged him to speak and assured him that he would stay there until he was on his feet again. The wizened old man smiled and said in a faint whisper, "Thank God my prayers were answered. I was afraid I was going to die out here all along. I've been meaning to get off this place for years, but where else would I go? I own this house and 600 acres all around, and I've been trying either to sell it or to get somebody to move out here and work the land for me, but nobody would do it, and I didn't have enough in the bank to buy the things I need. I'm land rich and money poor. Know what I mean?" Floyd nodded. After they had talked for a while longer, Floyd told him about the strange events which had brought him there. The old man smiled a knowing smile and settled back again. Then he dropped off to sleep. As the days passed, the old man gradually regained his strength. He was deeply grateful to Floyd, and appreciation made him a proposition. "If you will stay here with me and make something of this place, I'll leave you everything I own when I die. I'm past my 70, and I figure I'm on borrowed time right now. What else do you say? Is it a deal?" Floyd nodded. They shook hands, and then Floyd rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Almost as though someone had worked a miracle, a real estate broker showed up a few days later with a check for the old man. He had sold 100 acres of land for a tidy sum. With his money as working capital, Floyd bought a truck and a small tractor and building supplies. Men were hired to begin building sheds and a barn, and the land was tilled, ready for the spring planting. Within 2 years, the farm had prospered beyond the old man's wildest dreams. As he sat with Floyd in the front seat of the truck one afternoon, he smiled and said, "Floyd, I can't express how grateful I am for all you've done since you came here. It does my tired old eyes good to see all that land of ours out there bringing in our second crop of wheat and soybean and corn. Yes, sir, I was worth staying alive to see. Now I can rest in peace, feeling that I had kept my promise to God that I'd live a worthwhile life." Floyd looked at him, a puzzled frown on his face. "Your promise to God? I don't understand." The old man smiled and leaned back against the seat. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then seemed to drop off to sleep. Floyd called to him, then shook him, but he was dead. Although he had never asked the old man anything about his past life, Floyd had had a strange feeling all along that he would be told about it when the time was right, and now he apparently was never to know. However, Floyd was wrong. He found among the old man's effects a letter addressed to him. In brief, it told him the story of his life, how he had traveled around the world as a young man, had jumped ship in Bombay more than 50 years before, and gone to live with a group of Hindu mystics in an isolated monastery. There, the letter continued, I attained the cosmic consciousness. In my communion with God, I made a pact with him that I would return to the land of my fathers, and there would live and work the land and give more to the world than I had when I arrived on earth. And so, Floyd Griffith, you were summoned in a mysterious way by my astral self to come to me and to help me in the fulfillment of my obligation to God and to myself. Reach back into the deepest recesses of your memory, and you will know that it was I who bid you to come forth. Perhaps, Floyd, you wonder how a poor and humble man such as myself came to be the owner of so much wealth and land. I inherited this from my father, who had died by his own hand when the bank he owned failed in the Depression of 1893. At the time, I was so ashamed of him that I ran off to the four corners of the earth, trying to find myself, trying to learn who I was and why I was alive. I found those answers in India. When I returned to America in 1915, I learned about the land I had inherited. This came as a surprise to me, and I thank God that I now had a chance to fulfill my promise. But ill health and lack of funds made it impossible for me to till the soil, and so the seeds of my promise. The years passed, and then as I lay on the threshold of death, I projected myself on the astral planes of the other world and searched for someone to help me. Although you did not know it then, I knew that you would heed and obey my unspoken wishes, and so rightfully, all that I owned while I was a mortal upon earth is now yours. May God be with you and keep you. Find a good woman and marry her and have children so that they too may inherit the harvest of the crops we have sown today. Floyd Griffith blinked back his tears and he finished the letter. He carefully folded it and was about to put it away in a strong box for safekeeping when it suddenly disintegrated in his hands. He stared in awe as the fine white powder sifted down to the floor and said in a half whisper, "Thanks, old timer, you won't be disappointed." A short time later, Floyd met the girl who later became his wife and bore him 3 robust children. His firstborn, a son, he named after the mystic, but he never told his wife why he had explained upon that particular name. He did not have to explain. His wife already knew the old man's name and much of what there was to know about him, because he had been her uncle, a man who had infrequently seen him because she lived in California. When Floyd had obeyed the instructions in the old man's will, notifying him to contact his niece and several other distant relatives, the girl came to the funeral to pay her last respects. She took one look at Floyd, and he took one look at her, and they both knew they were meant for each other. But Floyd Griffith also realized something else. The old man had deliberately brought them together. How was it that he had come to this realization? Floyd found a curious inscription in the old man's Bible. O night that didst lead thee, O night that became my dawn, O night that brings thee to thee, lover to lover sights forever on, in marriage eternal, on and on and on. And in the back of the Bible he found written the words of a Hindu ascetic. O Mother Earth, Father Sky, brother wind, friend light, sweetheart water, here take my last salvation with folded hands. For today I am melting away into the supreme, because my heart became pure, and all delusions vanished through the power of your good company.